The twin suns of Zephyria cast their gentle amber light across the crystalline cities that dotted the planet's surface like precious gems scattered across velvet. In the highest spire of the capital city of Lumicrest, HFY pressed his elongated fingers against the transparent walls of the Observatory of Cosmic Harmony, his large violet eyes reflecting the peaceful beauty of his world below. His blue skin, the color of deep ocean waters kissed by starlight, seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence that all Zephyrians possessed, a biological trait that had evolved over millennia of living in harmony with their planet's unique electromagnetic fields. His pointed ears, sensitive to the subtlest vibrations in the air, twitched slightly as he detected the approach of his closest friend and fellow observer. "The resonance patterns are particularly beautiful today," said Lyranus as she glided into the chamber, her movements fluid and graceful. Like all Zephyrians, she shared the same ethereal beauty, the blue skin, the large expressive eyes, the delicate pointed ears, but each individual possessed their own unique shade of blue, from the deepest midnight to the palest sky. Lyranus bore the hue of twilight waters, and her presence always brought HFY a sense of profound peace. "Indeed," HFY replied, his voice carrying the melodic quality that characterized Zephyrian speech. "The harmonic convergence of our city's energy networks creates such perfect symmetry. Sometimes I wonder if other worlds experience such tranquility." The Zephyrians had built their entire civilization around the principle of harmony. Their cities were not constructed but grown, using a combination of advanced biotechnology and their planet's natural crystal formations. The buildings pulse with a gentle bioluminescence, creating a symbiotic relationship between architecture and inhabitant. Crime was virtually unknown, not because of laws or enforcement, but because their society had evolved beyond such primitive needs. They had transcended material want through a combination of advanced technology and spiritual enlightenment. "Have you completed your analysis of the deep space monitoring arrays?" Lyranus inquired, settling gracefully onto one of the meditation platforms that surrounded the central observation dome. HFY nodded, though a small crease appeared between his brows, an expression of puzzlement that was rarely seen on Zephyrian faces. "That's precisely what concerns me. The arrays have detected some anomalies in the distant sectors. Patterns that don't match any natural phenomena we've catalogued." For 3,000 years, the Zephyrians had maintained their peaceful isolation, choosing to observe the cosmos rather than venture into it. They had developed the most sophisticated long-range detection systems in their corner of the galaxy, not for military purposes, but out of pure scientific curiosity and a desire to understand their place in the greater cosmic order. "Anomalies?" Lyranus asked, her own eyes widening with interest. The Zephyrians viewed all mysteries as gifts to be unwrapped slowly and appreciated fully. "Gravitational disturbances suggesting massive objects moving in formation. The patterns are too regular, too purposeful to be natural. And there." He paused, consulting the holographic displays that materialized at his touch. "They're heading in our general direction." The concept of hostility was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that even the possibility didn't immediately occur to them. Their first assumption was always peaceful contact, scientific exchange, or perhaps refugees seeking assistance. "Fascinating," Lyranus mused. "Another space-faring civilization? How wonderful! It's been centuries since we've had the opportunity for cultural exchange. The Council of Harmony will be delighted." The Council of Harmony was Zephyria's governing body, though governing was perhaps too strong a word. They were more like gentle guides, helping to coordinate the planet's various research projects and cultural endeavors. They made decisions through meditation and consensus, a process that could take days but always resulted in choices that benefited all. HFY manipulated the controls, bringing up a three-dimensional star map that filled the chamber with points of light. The approaching objects appeared as a cluster of red indicators, their trajectory clearly defined. "According to my calculations, if they maintain their current speed and heading, they'll reach our system in approximately 37 days. Then we have ample time to prepare a proper welcome," Lyranus said with genuine enthusiasm. "We should begin composing the greeting symphony immediately." And the artists will want to create visual harmonies to share our culture. Oh, KLTHYSS, imagine what we might learn from them. The Zephyrians expressed their deepest emotions and ideas through what they called harmonies, complex combinations of music, light, color, and even electromagnetic frequencies that could convey entire philosophical concepts or emotional experiences in moments. Their first contact protocols involved sharing these harmonies as a way of demonstrating their peaceful intentions and sophisticated culture. As they spoke, other observers began to filter into the chamber. Word had spread through the city's consciousness network, a biotechnological innovation that allowed Zephyrians to share basic emotional states and urgent information instantaneously across vast distances. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but rather an evolved form of empathic communication that had developed alongside their technology. "Show us," said Elder Zephyronin, the oldest and most respected of the observers. His skin bore the pale blue of ancient ice, and his eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "Show us these visitors." KLTHYSS obliged, expanding the display until every detail was visible. The approaching fleet, for that's what it clearly was, consisted of dozens of massive vessels, each one larger than Zephyria's biggest city. The ships moved in perfect formation, their design angular and utilitarian, utterly unlike the flowing, organic aesthetics favored by the Zephyrians. "Such interesting architecture," commented another observer. "So rigid, so purposeful. Their builders must have very different aesthetic sensibilities than ours." Elder Zephyronin studied the display with growing concern, though he kept his thoughts carefully shielded from the consciousness network. Unlike the younger Zephyrians, he had lived long enough to study the ancient archives, the records from their species' distant past when they had been less enlightened, less peaceful. He recognized something in the fleet's formation, something that stirred memories of darker times. "How long before we can attempt communication?" he asked quietly. "We've been trying since the detection," KLTHYSS replied. "Standard greeting protocols, mathematical sequences, even artistic harmonies transmitted on multiple frequencies. So far, no response." This puzzled the assembled Zephyrians. In their experience, any species advanced enough to achieve interstellar travel would naturally have developed sophisticated communication abilities. The silence seemed almost deliberate. "Perhaps their communication methods are so different from ours that they don't recognize our attempts," suggested Lyranus, ever the optimist. "We should expand our efforts, try more basic approaches." Elder Zephyronin nodded slowly, but privately he began to wonder if the approaching ships represented something far more troubling than a simple communication barrier. The formation, the size, the purposeful silence, all of it reminded him of something he had hoped never to see again. As the days passed, the entire planet buzzed with excitement and preparation. Artists worked around the clock to prepare their most beautiful harmonies. Scientists compiled comprehensive databases of Zephyrian knowledge to share with their visitors. Philosophers composed welcoming meditations that would demonstrate the depth of their civilization's wisdom. The cities themselves began to resonate with anticipation, their bioluminescent patterns shifting to more vibrant hues as the collective emotional state of their inhabitants influenced the living architecture. Children gathered in schools to learn songs of greeting in case the visitors appreciated musical communication. Farmers tended their crystal gardens with extra care, hoping to provide the finest fruits for welcoming feasts. Only Elder Zephyronin seemed immune to the mounting excitement. He spent his time not in preparation for celebration, but in the deep archives beneath Lumicrest, researching fragments of ancient history that most Zephyrians preferred to forget. 20 days into the countdown, KLTHYSS made a discovery that would change everything. "Elder," he called through the consciousness network, his mental voice tight with concern. "You need to see this immediately." When Zephyronin arrived at the observatory, he found KLTHYSS standing before a display showing detailed scans of the approaching fleet. The young observer's usual calm demeanor had cracked, revealing something that looked almost like fear. "I've been conducting deeper analysis of their ship's energy signatures," KLTHYSS explained, his voice trembling slightly. "The power sources, the engine configurations, the structural reinforcements. Elder, these ships aren't designed for peaceful exploration or trade. Explain, Zephyronin said, though he suspected he already knew what the younger Zephyrian had discovered. The energy patterns indicate massive weapon systems. The whole configuration suggests ships designed to withstand combat. And the formation, it's not a diplomatic convoy, Elder. It's a war fleet. The words hung in the air like a discordant note in a perfect symphony. War. A concept so alien to modern Zephyrian society that they barely had words for it in their language. Zephyronin closed his eyes and accessed memories that he had kept locked away for centuries. Show me the tactical configuration, he said quietly. HFY highlighted the fleet's arrangement, and Zephyronin felt his worst fears confirmed. It's an invasion formation, he said, his voice barely a whisper. A textbook approach for planetary conquest. But why? HFY asked, his large eyes wide with incomprehension. What could they possibly want from us? We have no enemies, no conflicts. We've done nothing to provoke anyone. Sometimes, Zephyronin said sadly, the mere existence of peace is seen as a threat by those who profit from conflict. Or perhaps they simply see our world as a resource to be harvested, our people as commodities to be collected. The concept was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that HFY struggled to process it. But surely they'll listen to reason. Once they understand our nature, our intentions. My young friend, Zephyronin interrupted gently, I fear these visitors may not be interested in our intentions. Tell me, have you identified their species of origin? HFY nodded, pulling up another display. The ship's design suggests a species the ancient databases refer to as humans, though these records are very old and might be incomplete. Zephyronin's blood ran cold. He knew that name, knew it from the darkest chapters of galactic history. Deathworlders, he whispered. I'm sorry? Humans. They come from a planet their records call Earth, a world so hostile, so filled with violence and danger that it forged them into the galaxy's most effective predators. They call them Deathworlders because they evolved on a death world, a planet that kills the weak and strengthens the survivors until they become. He paused, searching for words that could convey the horror to someone who had never known violence. Until they become very, very dangerous. The consciousness network suddenly erupted with alarm as other observers picked up fragments of their conversation. Across the planet, the gentle happiness of preparation began to transform into something Zephyrians had not felt in millennia, fear. But what do they want? Lyranus asked as she hurried into the chamber, having sensed the disturbance through the network. Zephyronin accessed the ancient archives one more time, pulling up records that had been sealed for good reason. According to these historical fragments, humans have a concept they call slavery. They capture other intelligent species and force them to work against their will. Our attributes would make us particularly valuable to them. The idea was so monstrous that Lyranus actually staggered. Force work? Against our will? But that's impossible. No thinking being could do such a thing to another. I'm afraid they can, Zephyronin said grimly. And they will? Our peaceful nature, our natural empathy, our ability to work in harmony, these things that make us beautiful also make us vulnerable. To them, we're not people. We're property. The revelation spread through Zephyria like ripples through still water, each wave carrying shock, disbelief, and a growing sense of dread that the planet had never before experienced. In the great council chamber of Limicrest, an emergency session convened as the full weight of their situation became clear. The chamber itself reflected the species' commitment to harmony, a vast circular space where ceiling and walls flowed together in organic curves, all constructed from living crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. 12 meditation platforms were arranged in a perfect circle, each occupied by a member of the Council of Harmony. At the center, a holographic display showed the approaching human fleet, now just 17 days away. This cannot be real, said Councillor Valtharian, her indigo skin pale with distress. Surely no species could evolve such destructiveness and still achieve interstellar travel. The contradictions are impossible to reconcile. Elder Zephyronin, serving as both observer and historical consultant, manipulated the archive displays with a heavy heart. I'm afraid the evidence is irrefutable. The ancient archives contain extensive records from the last time humans ventured into this sector of space. The results were catastrophic for several peaceful civilizations. The records painted a picture of systematic exploitation that defied Zephyrian understanding. Entire species enslaved, their worlds stripped of resources, their cultures destroyed. The humans operated with a ruthless efficiency that combined advanced technology with a warrior's mindset forged on their hostile homeworld. But how is such a thing possible? Asked Counselor Tamlis, her voice breaking slightly. How can intelligence develop without wisdom? How can technology advance without enlightenment? Their homeworld shaped them differently than ours shaped us. Zephyronin explained, calling up images from the archives. Earth is a planet where survival requires constant struggle. Predators, natural disasters, disease, scarcity, their entire evolutionary history was written in blood and competition. They didn't transcend these traits when they reached the stars. They weaponized them. The images were difficult for the Zephyrians to process. Scenes of human warfare, their primitive ancestors hunting and fighting, their modern military machines devastating entire worlds. To beings who had evolved in harmony with their planet and each other, the concept of deliberately inflicting suffering was almost incomprehensible. Counselor Lythandra, the youngest member of the council, spoke with trembling voice. What do they do to those they capture? Zephyronin hesitated. The truth was difficult enough for him to bear, and he had spent centuries studying the darker aspects of galactic history. For someone like Lythandra, who had known only peace and beauty, the reality might be traumatizing. They use them, he said finally. Our archives indicate that captured Zephyrians are particularly prized because of our natural empathy and cooperation. We make ideal servants. They break our spirits through isolation and psychological manipulation, then put us to work in their colonies, their ships, their industrial complexes. The silence that followed was deafening. Several counselors had to support themselves against their meditation platforms as the full horror of their situation sank in. How many? Whispered Counselor Morthes. How many ships? HFY provided the answer from his position at the observation station. 47 vessels in the main fleet, with what appeared to be smaller escort craft. Conservative estimates suggest they could carry between 50 and 70,000 individuals. Against our population of 12 million. Counselor Veltharian calculated automatically, then stopped as she realized what she was doing. I'm calculating combat ratios. How did I? Survival instincts. Zephyronin explained sadly. They're beginning to reassert themselves. The closer the threat comes, the more our ancient programming awakens. We weren't always peaceful, counselors. Our ancestors fought for survival just like any other species. We simply chose to evolve beyond it. Then perhaps we can choose to fight now, suggested Counselor Tambarian, surprising everyone with the steel in his voice. The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the council. Fight? The very concept seemed foreign, impossible. Zephyrians were builders, healers, artists. They created beauty and harmony, not destruction. With what? Asked Counselor Lythandra practically. Our ships are designed for exploration and research. Our technology is focused on creation, not destruction. We have no weapons, no military, no understanding of warfare. We could learn, Tambarian pressed. We're not helpless. Our technology is advanced, our minds are keen. Surely we could adapt, could create defenses. In 17 days? Zephyronin interrupted gently. Against a species that has been perfecting the art of war for their entire existence? My friend, they've had millions of years to become the galaxy's apex predators. We've had 3,000 years to forget how to fight. The council fell silent again, each member wrestling with the magnitude of their situation. Outside the chamber, they could feel the growing panic of their people through the consciousness network. The entire planet was beginning to understand that their peaceful existence was about to end. We could hide, suggested Counselor Morthes. Our deep cities, the underground complexes. If we could conceal our population. Their sensors are too advanced. HFY reported from his station. I've been analyzing their scanning equipment. They can detect individual life signs from orbit. There's nowhere to hide that they won't find us. Then we run, said Counselor Valtharian desperately. We evacuate. We have ships we could. 12 million people? Zephyronin asked sadly. Our largest vessels carry perhaps 1,000 individuals. Even if we had warning enough to organize such an evacuation, which we don't, we lack the ships to move even a fraction of our population. And where would we go? The humans have faster ships, longer range. They would hunt us down before we could find refuge. One by one, the counselors were forced to confront a terrible truth. They were trapped. Centuries of peaceful development had left them utterly unprepared for the reality of hostile contact. Their advanced technology, their sophisticated culture, their beautiful cities, none of it could protect them from what was coming. So we do nothing? Counselor Lythandra asked, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. We simply wait for them to arrive and take us? Not nothing, said a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Every head turned to see Lyranus entering, her usually graceful movements sharp with determination. There may be one option we haven't considered. The council looked at her with desperate hope. Lyranus was not just an observer but one of their most brilliant minds, a master of both scientific research and artistic expression. The archives mention other species who resisted human expansion, she continued, moving to join the circle. Some were destroyed, yes, but others were simply left alone. There might be a pattern, a reason why some worlds were spared. Zephyronin's expression grew thoughtful. You're thinking of the Mirani Syndicate incident. Exactly. According to the records, the humans approached the Mirani worlds with a massive fleet, much like ours. But instead of conquest, they engaged in what the archives call negotiated withdrawal. The humans left, and the Mirani were never bothered again. What made the difference? Counselor Tambarian asked eagerly. Lyranus called up the relevant records, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. The Mirani made themselves undesirable as targets. They convinced the humans that conquest would be too costly, that the benefits wouldn't justify the expense. How? Several counselors asked simultaneously. They demonstrated capabilities that made conquest dangerous. Not necessarily military capabilities, but deterrent factors. The archives are incomplete, but it seems the Mirani convinced the humans that they possessed the ability to deny them their prize entirely. Zephyronin studied the records intently. You're suggesting we bluff. Make them believe we're more dangerous than we appear. Not exactly bluff, Lyranus corrected. More like selective truth. We do possess capabilities that could be dangerous if used in certain ways. Our biotechnology, our energy manipulation systems, our consciousness network. The question is whether we can present these abilities in a way that makes conquest seem unprofitable. Hope began to stir in the chamber, but it was a fragile thing. The idea of deception went against every principle of Zephyrian society, but faced with extinction, even their peaceful nature had to bend. It's worth attempting, Counselor Valtharian said slowly. But we would need to be very careful. If they discover the deception, then we're no worse off than we are now, Lyranus pointed out. At least this gives us a chance. What exactly are you proposing? Elder Zephyronin asked. Lyranus took a deep breath, clearly steeling herself for what she was about to suggest. We make ourselves appear to be a different kind of civilization than we actually are. Instead of presenting ourselves as peaceful scholars and artists, we present ourselves as guardians. Protectors of something the humans wouldn't want to risk. Guardians of what? The planet itself. We convince them that Zephyria isn't just our home, it's a vast repository of dangerous knowledge or technology that would be destroyed if they attack us. Make them believe that conquest would result in the loss of something far more valuable than slaves. The idea was audacious, requiring the peaceful Zephyrians to masquerade as something they fundamentally were not. It would mean lying on a scale that their society had never contemplated, creating an elaborate deception that went against everything they believed in. The consciousness network could be key, HFY said suddenly, understanding dawning in his large eyes. To a species like humans, our ability to share thoughts and emotions instantly across the entire planet would seem like a tremendous strategic advantage. They might believe we're a military collective rather than a peaceful commune. And our biotechnology, added Counselor Morthes, warming to the idea despite her reservations. Our living cities, our symbiotic relationship with the planet's ecosystem, to them it might look like we've weaponized our entire world. The energy manipulation systems we use for art and meditation could be presented as planetary defenses, suggested Counselor Tambarian. They wouldn't know that we use them to create harmonious light displays rather than destructive beams. Slowly, piece by piece, a plan began to take shape. It was built on deception and misdirection, concepts that felt deeply wrong to the Zephyrian mind, but it offered something precious: hope. We would need to coordinate the entire planet, Lyranus warned. Every citizen would need to play their part. Our artists would need to create threatening displays instead of beautiful ones. Our scholars would need to speak of war and destruction rather than peace and knowledge. Our children. She trailed off, the full weight of what they were contemplating settling over the chamber. Our children would need to learn to lie. Counselor Lythandra finished quietly. We would need to corrupt everything pure about our society in order to save it. The alternative is extinction, Zephronin reminded them gently. Not just death, but the complete destruction of everything we've built, everything we've become. Slavery, brutality, the end of harmony itself. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Faced with the choice between compromise and annihilation, the Zephyrians chose to compromise their principles in order to preserve their people. As the council dispersed to begin the massive deception, none of them could have imagined how much it would cost them, or how deeply it would change them. In choosing to appear as warriors, they were about to discover what it truly meant to become one. The transformation of Zephyria began at dawn the next day, just 16 days before the human fleet would arrive. Across the planet, the gentle bioluminescence of the living cities shifted from soft pastels to harsh, aggressive reds and oranges. Where once the architecture had flowed like water and sung like music, now it pulsed with what appeared to be barely contained energy. In the depths of Lumicrest, teams of the planet's most gifted biotechnicians worked frantically to reprogram their symbiotic buildings. Lyranus stood in the central coordination chamber, her artistic sensibilities crying out in protest as she watched centuries of beautiful design being corrupted into something alien and threatening. The energy resonance patterns are stabilizing, reported tech harmonist Velketh, his blue skin bearing the deeper hue that marked his caste. From orbit, it should appear that our cities are massive weapons platforms rather than living art. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Their greatest achievements, the seamless integration of consciousness, biology, and technology, would now serve as the foundation for their deception. The consciousness network that allowed them to share emotions and coordinate their society would appear to be a military communication system. Their living cities would seem like vast war machines. Their gentle energy manipulation would masquerade as planetary defense systems. Status report from the outlying settlements? Lyranus asked, though she could feel the updates flowing through the consciousness network in real time. Every Zephyrian on the planet was connected to the effort now, their combined will focused on a single, desperate goal. All communities are adapting according to plan, Velketh confirmed. The farming collectives are restructuring their bioluminescent crops to create geometric patterns that resemble military installations. The deep mining operations are shifting their extraction signatures to mimic weapons manufacturing. The orbital research stations are reconfiguring their sensor arrays to appear as defensive satellites. Through the vast windows of the chamber, Lyranus could see the changes rippling across Lumicrest itself. The graceful spires that had once reached toward the sky like frozen music now bristled with pseudo-mechanical additions, their flowing lines interrupted by angular constructions that suggested defensive weaponry. The effect was jarring, almost painful to behold for someone who had spent her life creating beauty. The children are having the most difficulty with the transition, reported educator harmonist Thalves through the network. Several of the younger ones are experiencing distress at having to suppress their natural empathy and creativity. This was perhaps the cruelest aspect of their deception. Zephyrian children were raised to express their emotions freely, to share their thoughts and feelings through the consciousness network without restraint. Now they had to learn to hide, to dissemble, to present a facade of hardness that went against their fundamental nature. "We need to help them understand that this is a form of protection," Lyranus responded. "Like the mimicry certain creatures use to avoid predators. We're teaching them to wear camouflage to keep our family safe." But even as she said it, she wondered what long-term damage they might be inflicting on their society. Children who learned to lie at such a young age, who suppressed their natural empathy and warmth, what kind of adults would they become? Would Zephyrian civilization survive the cure as well as the disease? Elder Zephronin's voice echoed through the network from his position at the main observatory. "Long-range sensors show the human fleet has increased speed. New arrival estimate, 14 days, 18 hours. The acceleration sent a ripple of anxiety through the collective consciousness, but also a surge of determination. They were running out of time, but they were also running out of reasons to fail. "Cultural preparation teams, report status," Lyranus called. "Historical archives have been restructured," came the response from Master Archivist Corothes. "All references to our peaceful development have been buried or recontextualized. The new historical narrative presents Zephyria as a world that achieved peace through strength, not through transcendence. We are now a species that chose isolation not from wisdom, but from power." The fabrication was extensive and sophisticated. Where the true history spoke of artistic achievement and spiritual growth, the false history spoke of military conquest and technological supremacy. Ancient exploration missions became reconnaissance flights. Scientific expeditions became territorial expansion. Even their greatest cultural treasures, the symphonies of harmony that represented the peak of their artistic achievement, were being reframed as psychological warfare tools. "Language adaptation is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported communication harmonist Yethlara. "We've introduced aggressive terminology and military concepts into common usage. The children are adapting to the new vocabulary faster than the adults, though some are showing signs of confusion about the discrepancies." "Artistic teams? The great galleries have been converted to appear as strategic planning centers," said Master Artist Nethvaren, her mental voice heavy with sorrow. "Our most beautiful harmonics have been restructured to create the impression of tactical communications. The cascade of eternal dawn now sounds like a battle hymn." Each report was another small death, another piece of their true selves sacrificed on the altar of survival. But slowly, systematically, they were creating a convincing illusion. To approaching scanners, Zephyria would appear to be a highly militarized world inhabited by a warrior species that had achieved dominance through force rather than wisdom. "What about individual behavioral modification?" Lyranus asked, dreading the answer. "That's our greatest challenge," admitted behavioral harmonist Caitlin. 3,000 years of evolutionary adaptation toward cooperation and peace can't be reversed in 14 days. But we're making progress. The adults are learning to suppress their natural empathy in favor of projected strength. We're teaching them to stand differently, speak differently, even think differently when observed." The transformation was taking place on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical posture became more aggressive, with Zephyrians learning to carry themselves like soldiers rather than scholars. Speech patterns shifted to eliminate the musical quality that marked their language, replacing it with clipped, authoritative tones. Even their natural bioluminescence was being controlled, suppressed to avoid giving away their emotional states. "The most effective technique has been what we're calling role immersion," Caitlin continued. "We're asking citizens to create fictional military personas and inhabit them completely. It's easier to lie when you're playing a character rather than trying to deny your true self." But the psychological cost was evident. Through the consciousness network, Lyranus could feel the strain on her people. The constant suppression of their natural responses, the forced adoption of alien behaviors, the need to deny their fundamental nature. It was traumatic in ways they were only beginning to understand. "Medical teams report increasing incidence of stress-related disorders," added Chief Healer Jothvaren. "Anxiety, depression, dissociative episodes." The consciousness network is helping us manage the worst cases, but the entire population is showing signs of psychological strain. How severe? Not life-threatening yet, but concerning. We're essentially asking our people to develop symptoms of mental illness as a survival strategy. The ability to disconnect from empathy, to suppress emotional responses, to maintain deceptive behavior patterns, these are all markers of psychological dysfunction in healthy Zephyrians. The irony was bitter. In order to appear strong to their enemies, they had to make themselves sick. In order to seem dangerous, they had to damage their own minds. The very qualities that the humans would find threatening were the ones that would harm the Zephyrians themselves. We need to establish some kind of support system, Lyranus decided. Rotation schedules so individuals aren't maintaining the deception constantly. Private spaces where people can be themselves. Meditation periods where the consciousness network can help stabilize psychological damage. Already in progress, Jothvaren confirmed. We're treating the entire operation as a medical emergency requiring careful management. The goal is to survive the deception without losing ourselves completely. Through the vast chamber's windows, Lyranus watched as another wave of transformations rippled across the city. Gardens that had bloomed with artistic expression now displayed rigid geometric patterns. Fountains that had once danced with joyful light now pulsed with mechanical precision. Even the sky seemed different, as orbital installations reconfigured themselves to create the impression of a heavily defended world. 12 days, she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of each passing hour. 12 days to complete the most elaborate deception in their planet's history. 12 days to transform from angels into demons, from creators into destroyers, from peace into the illusion of war. As night fell over Zephyria, the planet's new appearance was revealed in all its artificial menace. Where once the cities had glowed with the soft warmth of life and creativity, now they blazed with the harsh light of apparent military might. The transformation was complete enough to fool distant observers, but to those who lived within it, it felt like wearing the skin of a predator, while their gentle souls withered underneath. In the deepest chambers of Lumicrest, in spaces shielded from all outside observation, small groups of Zephyrians gathered to remember who they really were. They shared quiet harmonies, gentle thoughts, and the simple comfort of unguarded emotional connection. These sessions were brief, treasured moments of authenticity in an existence that had become one vast lie. But even as they maintained these pockets of truth, each Zephyrian could feel the deception beginning to change them. The false aggression was becoming easier to access. The suppression of empathy was becoming more natural. The consciousness network, designed to share beauty and wisdom, was now primarily carrying military jargon and tactical information. They were saving themselves by becoming something else. The question that haunted every mind on the planet was simple and terrible. When the deception was over, would they be able to find their way back to who they had been?